A very good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us here on Independent Television. This is Law and You. We're coming to you from Benin City, Nigeria. I'm Uya Mofwebe. Today we are jamming two discussions into one, and we hope to make the most of the next 25 minutes to help you create context and perspectives for this conversation. First of all, we're looking at crime. What is the concept of crime? What constitutes crime? When you say someone has perpetrated a crime, what makes a crime, or what makes an act of any sort a crime? That's on the one hand. And then, when you say you have laws, for example, as it is in the case of Nigeria, because a lot of people, lawyers, academics, and even politicians have said Nigeria has some of the most beautiful laws, but the extent to which we are able to enforce these laws has become something a bit questionable. For example, you look at the environment, there are laws on the environment, how the environment should be protected, how people should, as it were, interact with the environment. But I can assure you that most Nigerians don't even have the slightest clue as to what these laws are, what they say, and how they should be enforced. But how do we make society better? How do we even make progress? How do we develop as a people, as a government, as a population, if we first do not understand what the law says, and then of course how these laws should be enforced? It also goes down to the individual. Most people, members of the public, everyday people, do not seem to understand their rights. So how do they know that first that they have rights and what these specific rights are, and how they can seek redress just in case it happens that any of these rights is infringed upon? I'm joined by a legal practitioner to help us lend his voice to this very topical issue. J. Jones Esquire, thank you for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
You know, a lot of times you hear people say that person is a criminal.
Yeah.
And you're wondering what makes him a criminal. Sometimes, of course, you hear things like how that an individual was found being in illegal possession of firearms. Sometimes the crime may not be as serious,
yes,
but yet the person is said to be a criminal. What makes a crime, or what makes an act a crime, and who can be said to be a criminal?
Well, in simple terms, the simplest definition of crime could be seen as an offense punishable under the law. Going further, it's an infraction, it's a breach, it's a violation of the law. So when you have violated the law, and that infraction to be a crime must attract a punishment.
Okay.
But that's what differentiates it from a civil wrong. If a criminal offense carries a punishment, either by fine, imprisonment, or that. So a crime is basically where people or anybody has decided to violate set of laws or go contrary to the rules, go contrary to the laid down code of behavior. Like if you decide to go against something that is prohibited, it is prohibited for one to steal,
Right.
it's prohibited for one to fight in public places, it's prohibited to inflict injury on another person. So when you violate the law, it becomes criminal and it attracts punishments. Now on the other hand, there's a civil wrong.
Right.
The civil wrong does not attract punishment. Rather, it attracts compensation, if assuming the person who has suffered from your civil wrong, because civil wrong is like a breach, so it will not attract punishment. Rather, if the person feels aggrieved, goes to court, claims damages, and is awarded if he can conveniently convince the court that he is deserving of such damages. So that's what differentiates crime from civil wrong.
Okay.
So crime is an infraction against the law.
Most times you hear about crimes, how that somebody has committed a crime, how that there has been a criminal offense. Then you also hear of violent crimes. What's the distinction really?
Well, a violent crime is also a criminal offense. Now, a criminal offense, like I've said simply, that where you have done an act prohibited by law, where you have contravened, violated the law,
right,
that's a criminal offense. Now, violent crimes are crimes that entails that the perpetrator carried out some violent acts, caused injury, did some destruction.
Yes.
understand? For instance, I'll take a just simple case of stealing now. Now, if you go and somebody went quietly and stole somebody something, it's a criminal offense, it's stealing, because you have taken that in without the consent of the person. But if the person got there, broke down the door, shatter things, and inflict injury on the victims, that's a violent crime.
Right.
Because it comes with violence. That's why it's called violent crime.
Let's talk about briefly the anti-crime measures, because first of all, it's clear enough to know that there are crimes in society, and of course you have criminal elements all over the place. And then that raises the question of anti-crime measures. What are supposed to be some measures put in place to ensure that crimes may not be, as it were, eliminated, but at least, eradicated, but you should be able to have a society where it is minimal? What are some things that ought to be done to minimize crime rates?
Yes, there are a lot of things that are in place. The criminal code is there. That's the code to regulate and ensure that those who perpetrate crime are punished.
Right.
Criminal code is there, and there are also other regulations and rules. But you see, if you want to minimize crime in the society, it's not really by enforcing some of these anti-crime laws, the way you put it, or the code. But I think it will go more beyond that and look at, why do we have upsurge in crime? Why do people, what's the psychology of a criminal? Why do people go into crime? And the answers will not be far-fetched, because you will see that one of such reasons why people go into crime is unemployment. When people are idle, they have nothing doing, there are no meaningful activity they are engaged in, they will definitely, they said the idle mind is the devil's workshop.
Right.
They will definitely resort to crime or criminal activity. And another thing is, after unemployment now, the next thing is poverty. The poverty level in Nigeria is quite high. And when some people are swimming in affluence, having more than enough, and you expect the majority hungry, desperate, and starving to watch and just allow you go like that. So ideas will come into their head. So if government want to stem this and at least bring criminality to a minimal level, they must tackle the issue of unemployment and poverty. And then also, there's also a responsibility on the shoulders of our parents and me and you to embrace good moral standard.
Right.
Because the Bible, like even the Bible says, train up a child the way he should go, he will not depart when he grows up. So when you imbibe on a child the basics, like if you tell a child from the beginning that stealing is bad, indulging in one form of criminality is bad, and ensure that it does not get mingled with strange character that will not eventually influence his behavioral attitude. So that is what we should do. We should, on the moral ground, make sure that we give proper training to our ward and children.
I asked that question because just recently the United Nations is reporting that in the last 1 year at least 64,000 people have been killed in Nigeria. Murdered, that's the word, murdered in Nigeria. And that will obviously reflects a spike in murder rates in this country. And you talked about some of the things, including employment, responsible for this spike, for this upsurge. Of course, the UN even goes further to say, in addition to unemployment that you've talked about, there's also the issue of poverty and so on and so forth. When you look at the peculiarity of our environment, which is Nigeria now, do we look ready? Do we look like we understand the enormity of the task in front of us when it comes to fighting crime?
Well, I think we should first, avert our mind to the fact that if you look at the peculiarity of Nigeria, there seems to be a perceived collapse of confidence in the justice mechanism. People now no longer have confidence that, they will get justice. People are aggrieved, one thing or the other, because of the kind of experience they have gone through the hands of the authority. Somebody is arrested and thereabouts, and before you know it, is detained and tortured. And when he comes, he wants to vent his anger on the society. So that and many more could contribute to the upsurge in, criminal activities now. And not forgetting insurgency and all that. That's another ball game entirely. But there are reasons why people go into crime.
Right.
And we must understand the psychology of a criminal. So if the government understands that and begins to look at how to minimize some of the motivations, and then begin to motivate them positively into indulging. That's why I say, if you're busy and you're gainfully employed, you have little or no time for
the chances of you getting engaged in crimes will be minimal.
That's so employment and poverty is key. We must work on those two.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break at this point. So when we return, we continue talking along these lines. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us here on Law and You on Independent Television. I was just going to ask you something a while ago about law enforcement. Sometime in 2013, respected senior lawyer Falano had talked about how that the justice system is, in his words, messed up. All right. So what are your sentiments along that line as a practicing lawyer yourself?
Well, to an extent, I share his sentiment, but not in its entirety, because I will not fully ascribe to that. There are a few, a few incidents that we can look at that one could ascribe to that. But you see, we must worry about what does a common man think about the justice system. How does the common man? Because a situation where majority of the perception is that there's compromise.
Right.
I still feel that in as much as that may be the majority of the perception, there are still some very, how will I say it now? There are some people with honor, integrity in the system. But I think there should be a total revamping of the justice system. Like an instance where somebody is arrested for a crime or allegedly, and there's presumption of innocence in the Constitution.
And that's a fundamental principle.
Fundamental principle that this person is presumed innocent until it is proved otherwise. And the police takes the person to the magistrate court in full knowledge that the magistrate courts do not have jurisdiction to try that particular crime.
Well,
the magistrate court, who do not have jurisdiction, embraces jurisdiction to determine whether it has jurisdiction or not. Now, the magistrate court looks at the charge before him and says, I don't have jurisdiction. Rather than maybe transferring straight to the court that has jurisdiction so that the trial could start immediately, you refer to the DPP for his advice. And before the DPP can give his advice, 2 years may have gone. Now, where lies that presumption of innocence? Somebody could have served 2 years awaiting trial for an offense that eventually may turn out that he is innocent. Then how do you compensate for that? How will when the man comes out in the society, how will he look at the society? What will be his attitude? Definitely somehow there must be some element of disenchantment with the society. And before you know it, you could conclude that, well, I've gone to jail.
Can be worse than that.
It can be worse than that. And for nothing, when I've not done anything, why don't I really do something? And so we must look at our justice system and see how we can review it. So that we can get, because they said justice delayed is justice denied. So by the time you keep denying justice, like this instance I gave now, you find out that you have denied the person his fundamental human right of freedom, the fundamental presumption of innocence was not there, because if you presumed him innocent, why send him to jail?
In the first place.
In the first place. You can tell the police, take him back, grant him bail, release him. When you can properly get the charges that could come into my court, cooperate with him, or you take him to the proper court, not to refer to the DPP. I do not agree with matters being referred to the DPP while the person is in custody. You can release the person on bail while you're giving your opinion.
I'm just going to follow you up on that one now, because when you look at the issue of law enforcement, it's not entirely the lawyers that should take on the entire task.
Yes.
You have the police,
Yes.
you have other security outfits that are all part of this, as it were, now, as they say in business, value chain.
Yes.
All right. Do we have collaborations along that line? Do we have, as we know it now, interagency alliances to make this process faster and more effective?
I don't know if we have that kind of synergy, if that's what you're looking at.
Right.
But I know that each of them on their own, they try to do their work, you know, independent of the other. Because the police will get somebody, and if we, instead of trying to collaborate with the Ministry of Justice to actually know whether these are offenses you can charge or get the proper charge against the person, they will just come up with their own and take to court. And in enforcement of law by the police, I think they need more orientation and training.
Okay.
In senior clients, I think the police are taught how to respect the rule of law. I think they should be taught how to respect the dignity of human person. You don't, in our own situation here, the law enforcement agents seem to have this notion that they are everything, they are overall. It is, you are their mercy, except maybe sometimes you go to challenge them in court. So they need more orientation, they need more tutoring, and they also need to evaluate their psychology, particularly at the lower
cadre of the force.
Yes, of the force. They need to give them reorientation and psychological training and all that, so as to make them have more respect for human dignity.
We can't run away from the fact that when you look at law enforcement, especially where there are criminal elements, investigation is an integral part of that process. A lot of times you hear of the police being accused of shoddy investigation. That rubs off on the outcome ultimately, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I have handled several cases, even for Edo State government, where eventually we had so much challenges trying to, glaring and very clear cases. We could not, we had very strong challenges in trying to prove beyond all reasonable doubt the guilt of the person because of the manner and way the police conducted their investigation.
Right.
There are procedures they ought to have followed, maybe in taking a witness statement. Sometimes they will say they obtained. You don't obtain statements.
Is that a wrong move?
Yeah, that's a wrong move. When you write you obtained a statement, obtaining means that's a coercion. You don't coerce people to give statements.
So what's the best practice?
You can record statement from the person.
Okay.
You record the statement rather than obtaining. Rather than sometimes they miss the cautionary words. The person must be cautioned before he or she begins to volunteer his statement. And they must ensure that the statement that you're recording was given voluntarily. Now if you miss it there and it becomes, there's every little suspicion that the statement was not given voluntarily, it could go a long way to adversely affect your case. And also because of the long period prosecution takes, most times your witnesses, you may not be able to find them. And even when you find them, they will be at the it will be your responsibility to begin to finance them to come to court.
Right.
Sometimes witnesses will say they are not interested anymore.
Oh, I'm not in town.
I'm not in town. I'm not interested. Why are you bothering me? This thing happened last year. Why is it now that you're coming up with this matter? So it looks as if you're not crying more than the bereaved.
Right.
So the delay and some of the mistakes on the side of the police has will definitely affect the outcome.
Let's talk about one more thing before we're done with this discussion. Senate crimes, those were the words I used a while ago. In those crimes, things like ICT, information communications technology, forensics, and so on and so forth, have been integrated into this entire law enforcement process. Conversely, that does not seem to be the case back at home in Nigeria. So why are we foot dragging in embracing this innovation?
No, I don't think we are foot dragging. I think it is because of the literacy level.
Okay.
The literacy level is low, is very low, and the illiteracy level is high. Not everyone can operate the computers. And even in the police force, not all of them were trained to use the computers. So until we get to that point, and then data bank too, we do not have a robust data bank, so to say. I wouldn't say we don't have at all. So if you don't have a very good robust data bank that you can press on your computer, and rather than going to do some investigation, you get the profile of that person and know everything, it's not here. And you can't have all of this computer, data bank and all that if you don't have a steady and reliable power system.
So the problems are mostly, I mean, they're hydra-headed.
Of course, they are. And so if there's no light to power your system, to power the kind of investigation you would have carried out, you'd rather go to manual and do the investigation physically. But it would have been easier going on your system, carrying out forensic study. If you take fingerprints from a scene of a crime, where are you going to take it to? You get to the office, there's no light.
To analyze.
And then there are certain periods, if you don't do that, it could be infiltrated by some other...
So if you miss that window, it could be compromised.
Compromised, that's the truth. So it's not that it's not working in our system, it's just that the right things have not been put in place. And the blame lies squarely on the shoulders of our political leaders.
All right.
Yes.
I think that's the much we can have on this conversation. J. Jones, Esquire, thank you for coming. We appreciate it. That's our time on this week's edition of Law and You. Many thanks for watching. I'm Mufwebe. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.